Now don't forget to save your work regularly and give your code a meaningful name. Remember, the code is called a sketch. So file, save as, and give it a name. In this case, I've called mine single LED. Now, whenever you do coding, just keep in mind that your software, your coding, your sketch will have normally 3 parts to it. In the top here, we have what are called the global variables. These variables in black there, LED pin 2 and blink interval, are variables that operate within the entire area of the code. So that means I can refer to LED pin 2 and blink interval anywhere in my code, and the computer will understand what I'm talking about. Now, whenever you initialize or start off your code for the first time, this particular thing here, in this basic called a function or subroutine, or anyway, it's a bit of code that it runs only once. It's done at the start of the operation of the sketch. So the very first time the sketch was used or reused after it's re-uploaded, this is the first bit of code that's run after reading this part here. And this is basically for initializing, configuring different parts of the Arduino board. And then this part down here is another function or subroutine or just an area of code that repeats over and over again. It's in a continuous perpetual loop, right? It never stops. So it starts at the beginning and goes down there and then goes back to the beginning and around and around and around. All right, now, so let me explain the different parts. So here we have at the top there, we're telling the computer, or that the pin number 2 over here has a name, and when we refer to that pin, we'll refer to it with its variable name, LED pin 2. The second variable here has a name, blink interval, and it's set to 200. Now that 200 means 200 milliseconds. So the blinking interval on and off is 200 milliseconds for each. So 200 milliseconds on, 200 milliseconds off. Okay. Over here, if I can find my pen, we're basically telling Uno, that the LED pin number 2 is going to be used for output, and that's how it's going to function. Now, all these things here with a double slash, they're comments. They're for readers and programmers and testers and debuggers to understand what the code is all about. So they're very important if other people get to work with you, so they can understand what you're programming. Now down here we've got 2 things that repeat twice. So we've got 4 lines, the first 2 lines there and the second 2 lines. The first 2 lines are basically telling the LED light to turn on. High means on, and the next 2 lines down the bottom here, line 3 and 4 there, are telling the LED light to go off, and for the certain amount of time. So that delay means pause for that many milliseconds. Alright, so that's how that code works. Now, another thing I need to mention is that at the end of every instruction there needs to be a semicolon. Now, the language used by Arduino is very similar to Java, or maybe it is Java, and it basically tells the compiler that you have ended that particular instruction. Normally instructions are on 1 line, but maybe more than 1 line. Now, another thing to keep in mind is when you have these things here, this bit of code, the parentheses that start there, open, and close here, close, these are like containers. It tells the compiler that this is a section of code that's part of one particular process, like a subroutine, a function, a class, or whatever. So you need to make sure you don't delete these guys, otherwise you'll be in trouble. And this one's an opening one, and that one's a closing one. The same goes down here, opening and closing. And with more sophisticated languages, you can insert things in between these ones here, okay, the brackets there. But for this stuff, you don't really need to worry too much about that, unless you're doing some more fancy coding where you can actually pass information from your code here, like this one has information being passed to a inbuilt subroutine or function or class in the Arduino language. So, but for our code, we don't really need to put things inside there. It's pretty, keep it simple.